That was a shorter one. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm sure you're tired of me talking about how scary the Zoom voice is when I hit record, but this time we were braced for it, and then it was like just a really short thing. Oh, hey, Bethany's here. Bethany Corrie.
Hi.
And her baby Francis is here.
Yeah. Say hi, Francis. He woke up for it. He was napping, but
very busy looking at mommy's face.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Bethany and I are going to ostensibly discuss a Janet Lansbury quote, but mostly, as I just said to her off mic, I just want to hear stories about her baby. So so that's what we're going to do. Let me do this quote first. And I think this comes from Elevating Childcare, the book that Janet Lansbury wrote. I think that because I just bought it for a friend who's having a baby. And so I probably was looking at it and found the quote. So this is what Janet says. Playtime for young infants may look pretty boring to the untrained adult eye. We feel compelled to entertain a baby or believe she needs to be kept stimulated by continually moving with us through our daily affairs in a carrier or infant seat. Truthfully, babies don't need us to expend our energy occupying their time. In fact, keeping a baby busy undermines her natural desire to be an initiator of her own activities and absorb the world on her terms. She's so smart.
So smart.
Janet Lansbury.
I love that quote.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that, as I was rereading it now, just the word stimulating is such a pet peeve of mine when we're talking about kids, babies particularly, but kids in general. When you think about how brand new the world is. And
it's very stimulating.
Right? I just think it's really, good intentions, of course, probably for most of us who have used that word, and I certainly have in my life. But just the audacity of thinking that we could offer anything to that baby that's going to be more engaging and absorbing and valuable than just being here with us and in the world with us.
Well, and like they've got so much going on internally that they're already super busy. So
yeah.
I mean, if their outside world is insane, then that's just going to be a mess.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about, what do we talk a lot about? It was there a minute ago. We talk a lot about something. Oh my God.
Who knows? The baby smiled. It doesn't matter what we talked about.
So terrible. This is going to be the worst podcast with the best video.
Yeah.
Just the idea that it's hard to get back into, like when we're talking about play, we talk about how hard it is for us to remember being children and playing, and how hard it is for us to see things through the lens of a child. And I think that's, again, especially true with an infant. We look at them and we think that kid is just laying there. They need me to do something. I'm in this role now.
Babies are boring.
I have a responsibility. Yes. And that too, people who say, I don't like to mess with babies because they don't do anything. Well, you just don't, Janet said it, the untrained adult eye, you just don't know. And unless you put some effort into knowing and thinking about it, why would you know that? But
right. And it does look like nothing. I mean, I was in I'm in the mommy forums.
Oh, dearie.
Days, which is just honestly a terrible idea. But one mom, I'm in a group of other moms with babies born in April of 2021. And which is kind of, I've posted in it. It's kind of an interesting spot sometimes, but it was around when our babies were all around 2 months old, and a mom said, what do I do with my baby? She just looks so bored. She's just laying there, staring off into space, not doing anything. And I'm like, I wonder what she's looking at. Like, what's in that corner that she sees? What's that, is there, the usual suspects? Is there some dust motes or a rainbow from the window? And so once I felt that moment of, oh my God, is he bored? He's just been laying there not moving, and he hasn't made a sound, and he's not asleep, but maybe but that moment can just come into my brain and leave because um, babies are so busy.
Yeah. And it's sort of the ultimate process versus product,
Yeah.
right? Because that baby laying there looking like maybe he's not doing anything. If you think about the sensory input
Right.
that could be just being processed and experienced and lived through, and it's registering in their brain when all
Yeah.
that sensory input's coming through, and so anything we offer there as stimulation or whatever is actually going to be an interruption of those processes,
Right. I mean,
and
if it's,
probably be much more harsh sensory input than what he's just laying there
oh yeah.
experiencing.
Um, I startle the crap out of this baby all the time because
Poor
I'm
baby.
loud. Uh,
No.
the house has been quiet for the past
Oh.
4 months,
Uh-huh.
and I'll just like be reading something or whatever, and I'll just start laughing, or I'll holler out to Brian and say something to him. And this poor boy, he's like one of those, the cats that get scared
Yeah.
and they're back.
Yeah.
They do the jump up in the air. That's what he looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so like I've seen it firsthand, and you think we talk about, you brought it up with the play, like getting in, children getting into play and what happens when we interrupt like those toddlers and preschoolers when they're playing. But I see the same thing happen with Francis. He's been doing, whether he's exploring like the fabric on a blanket, or
Mm-hmm.
he's got a couple of high contrast books that he's obsessed with. Um, and and then if there's, that if it's either me coming up, whether I think he needs a diaper change or whatever, or I'm just being myself and loud, um, he will glare at me like, how dare you
Mother.
ruin my concentration? Like I almost had, the blanket in its perfect spot. I had
Uh-huh.
almost got the one tag I wanted, and I've ruined it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Liz Nolasco, who's on the
mhm.
show a lot and also has a pretty new baby. Um, a little older than your baby, I think.
Yeah,
Her
a
little
couple
guy's a
months.
little older, but she sent me just like a video through text one day. And if I remember right, he's just like sitting in his car seat and sort of playing with the straps and really engrossed with the
Yeah.
strap and just sort of, manipulating it with his hands. And the text was just, I forgot how fascinating baby play is.
Yeah.
And I looked at that moment and I thought there aren't very many people who probably would have that response to watching an infant just sort of grabbing at the strap of a car seat and
Right.
staring at it.
Right.
Um,
And you
but
have the
it's so
people who
true.
might, yeah, you might have the people who like stop that, don't mess with that.
Yeah.
Or I was thinking about um when you brought up Liz, the one where uh her little baby is playing, like chewing on the bib.
Uh-huh.
And that was right around when Francis was born. And I remember seeing that and I thought, oh, I can't wait for that. I can't wait till he
I can't wait to watch my baby chew on a bib.
yeah, like that's
Yeah.
gonna be so awesome when he can like figure out how to grab it.
Yeah.
Um, so before we started recording, I'm gonna segue to
Yeah.
my little baby jumper, because I was joking that um, we don't need to Heather said we don't need to entertain babies, and then I turned the camera to the little Fisher Price jumperoo that you stick the baby in, and it's got the 3,000 toys attached to it. Um, and this boy loves jumping. His dad has gotten him started like early. They do their little calisthenics every day. And so I was like, I'll just find one. I found the least busy one that I could find on Facebook Marketplace. So I didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money. And so first, I'm looking up like the product manual, right? Because I don't know how old, how much he can weigh, all that. So in the questions asked to Fisher Price, some parents said, "Do these toys remove and have replaceable toys? Because my baby's bored of them." And I'm like, what? Like this kid was properly like 5 months old or something like that. And they're like, yeah, he's done with these toys.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's super bored. And I'm just like, Okay. And this is, like it's not like a big flashing,
Uh-huh.
lots of noise type of thing. It's more like moving the pieces your own self.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of chuckled at that. And then
Yeah.
when you sent the quote, it reminded me of that. But then he hasn't really explored it, but there's like a little ball that rolls, and he's figured out how to get his hand to hit that to roll the beads around.
Uh-huh.
And yesterday, he was sitting in it for a minute, and there's an alligator with big black and white eyes and scales that move back and forth. And so sometimes I'll just sort of tap him back and forth while he's watching.
Uh-huh.
And he sat there for probably 5 minutes trying to work his left hand to get up to the alligator. And I just sat there watching him, and I mean, he looked bored. He wasn't moving any part of his body except for his left hand
Uh-huh.
and and that. Um,
But
but it
that's such a good example of what Janet Lansbury said about the untrained adult eye, because there's two things that I want to that come up for me as you're talking about that were important enough for me to interrupt you to get to. But one is, if we understand how babies develop, it's from the inside out. So what you saw was him really working so hard to have that coordination over the outside edge of
yeah,
his body. And if you don't know that about babies, then you look at that and you may think, oh, he just needs more practice, or I need to move it closer, or
yeah, let me move his body.
yeah. But if you understand it and you can just give him time and repeated opportunity, and you understand it, so you can sort of celebrate it,
Right.
but you don't need to add to it necessarily at that point. He doesn't need more stimulation.
Yeah,
um,
because it was exhausting.
I believe he was probably working so hard. I can picture the intensity on a baby's face trying that new move.
Yeah.
But also so much just from that woman's question about switching out toys because the baby was bored. I think a lot of what we see as babies being bored or wanting something new is actually sensory shutdown. Like they're overloaded, so they shut down, and they either cry, or they look off, or they try to look away from the thing that's overstimulating for them.
Right.
That's why I get physically uncomfortable when I see the babies who are, and I understand why people use these, but babies who are just laying on the floor with one of those jungle gym things hanging like over
Yes.
their face, and they can't get away from it if they wanted to. And especially in a childcare setting when, maybe I do that and I'm there with the baby, and he's sort of batting at it and things are fine. But then I have to go over here to this other baby who suddenly has a need. And that first baby, looks like I've left him in a very stimulating,
Yeah.
educational kind of situation, but it could be really scary or overwhelming for the baby who can't get out of it if it becomes too much.
Right. There's no way to turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I've got nothing to add.
Oh, well then.
I was kind of pausing like I was going to say something.
Yeah,
and
I
then-
know. I waited.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I also have it's landscaping day, so I'm sure you're all hearing the power
Ooh.
mowers running around outside my house right now. Okay, I want to look at the quote again and see what else I
Yeah.
wanted to hit. Well, the other thing. So have you read Alison Gopnik's newest book, The Gardener and the Carpenter?
I haven't yet.
Yeah, I haven't gotten all the way through it, but I love what I have
Started
read.
it twice.
And I know, so the idea is it's for parents, but parenting is a relationship, not a verb. And I think, we can say the same thing, especially about people who are working with infants in childcare settings, and maybe, they call themselves teachers or whatever language they use. Understanding what's happening with that baby and just focusing on sort of being in tune is so
Yes.
much more important than any kind of stimulation or activity or whatever. And her idea, Gopnik's idea, is that we do too much, we try too hard because we feel like that's what's expected or what the baby needs. And
Yeah. I mean, we're, putting headphones on tummies
yeah
when baby's in utero and,
yeah
and all that. It is down to relationship. I mean, Brian and I have been very fortunate that we were both able to take almost 4 months off
Yeah.
of work. And that has just been amazing, because not only just for us not being so exhausted, but we've really gotten to know Francis really deeply.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, almost in the first week, you know, we knew his different cries and his different, just all the, just one little noise out of him, we knew, oh, he needs this, oh, he
Uh-huh.
needs that. And we say, well, he'll just tell us, but but we've been really in tune to him, because we've been able to be so responsive. um, so I mentioned he likes those high contrast picture books.
Uh-huh.
So he's got one we keep upstairs, and um, one of the little girls I nannied for, it was her favorite book when she was an infant. And so I got it for Francis, and I said, well, let's just, I'm just going to put it up and see if he looks at it. Well, at about 6 weeks old, he would start, he'd read it in bed before he went to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd have his passy in his mouth because he's a passy boy. And he would look at one page, and then when he was done, he would spit his passy out and cry out. And we discovered he's not fussing, he's not whatever. He wanted the page turned.
It's like
And
one
so
of those old books on tape.
yes. So
With
we
a little ding to turn the
we'd
page.
turn the page, put his passy in, and he'd sit there
Oh my God.
for another, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then when he was done, he'd spit the passy out all the way either till when he fell asleep or the book was done.
Yeah.
But he knew. And sometimes Brian would just open the book and set it on his bed, and Francis would get mad because he wanted it to start at the beginning of the book. And like,
Yeah.
it sounds silly. And, I'm obviously, like, we started kind of that habit.
Right. Yeah.
But it was something that, because we have that relationship and we are, being in tune to his cues, we know it's not, oh, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, but
regardless of who started it, it's
right.
It's such a good example of the kind of serve and return that we know is so important for kids really under 5, but babies and toddlers, especially when they give you any kind of sign that they want to communicate something with you, and you respond and you keep trying. And even if the response is not exactly what they wanted, they get that. When I reach out, there's a response, and there's someone paying attention, and there's someone trying. And it's those kinds of interactions that are much more quote unquote educational for a baby than, having brightly colored things in an infant classroom. I have a woman I used to work with whose baby was in childcare, with one of those apps where they can send pictures throughout the day of what the kids are doing. And she got a picture of her four-ish month old baby laying on the floor, and he's holding a board book about colors and shapes. And the caption was, babies learning about colors and shapes today, mom, or something like that. And it could have just been playful, but I know that there are people I have worked with that would not be playful. Like, that would really, that's what they really would have thought was happening in that moment. And sure, he was getting literacy experience because he was interacting with a book. He was holding it, he was exploring it, and that's pre, emerging literacy stuff. We know that, but let's really work to be skilled and knowledgeable enough to recognize what really might be happening with a baby that we're looking at and observing, and not immediately try to prescribe older behavior or academic bits and pieces, because it's so much deeper. Like what you described with that book is so much deeper than, oh, he's learning to read or whatever.
He's learning about it's got a lot of flowers and things like that. So maybe he's learning about the natural worlds.
at least connections or foundations
baby's first gardening lesson.
Yeah. There was something else.
Yeah.
Oh, so I wanted to say, because you just did a really good job of talking about becoming attuned or working towards being attuned with a baby. And so I know there are folks listening who are like, yeah, well, I've got 8 babies in the room and there's 2 of us. So how do we do that? And, you know, you do childcare, you've got a family childcare
Yeah.
home. So you've got other kids and you've worked with babies before, Francis. So what do you say to someone who's like, yeah, sure, that works for you, but that won't work? I've got a group.
Well, I just said it today on Facebook. Caregiving is the curriculum.
Yeah.
Um, when I started my in-home program, the Children's Borough here 6 years ago, um, I had 4 toddlers, and we did not get much done during the day other than uh, multiple diaper changes, feeding,
Huh.
and um, kind of transitioning between those
Right.
2.
And moving between them. Yes. Yeah.
Um, and it is hard when you're thinking as a teacher, or childcare provider, that you need to get teaching in on top of it,
Yeah.
um, because there's no way that would happen. Like, I've never done a circle time, but you know,
Yeah.
like we get experience to different academic things, if we need to, to put a name on it, like you
Uh-huh.
said.
Yeah.
Um, but I think um, just taking those times to slow down. I mean, I say that diaper changes are my favorite
Right. Me
because,
too.
yeah, like you get one-on-one, undivided attention with that child.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how old they are. I mean, sometimes, yes, you have to rush through, and I can do a 30-second diaper change. Like sometimes
Yeah.
it's needed.
Yeah.
But I've always liked being able just to slow down, because then it doesn't matter what's happening when the child is off playing.
Uh-huh.
They know they've got that moment, and we can take some time together.
Mhm.
And it is, it's hard to do, like when you're a family child care provider and you're making lunch and you're, um,
All those other things
refereeing
that you
and
have to do when you're the only adult.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. When I did family childcare, and I only lasted a year at it, but I just had babies and toddlers, and I had like 5,
yeah,
maybe one baby and 4, 1 and 2 year olds. And of course it's challenging. Of course it's difficult. But it's not all or nothing. It's not, well, I can't be perfect all the time and be fully present in every interaction with every child.
oh yeah, I know you're not going to be.
And but what it comes down to really, and honestly, thinking about a diaper change was the biggest sort of career change, professional mindset change for me in 30 years of doing this. When I first was faced with the idea that maybe my assembly line diapering style wasn't the thing to be proud of as I was, like maybe it could be more, and I would benefit from it being more, in addition to the kids benefiting from
Yeah,
me being more intentional and trying to find that attunement. That changed everything for me, just that one diaper change switch. And I know people have heard the story 100 times, but as I was listening to you, if I had to say what's one baby step to get more in tune
yeah,
and the worry less about stimulation and education, it would be to start with diaper changes.
yeah. It was interesting. So before I knew about like RIE resources for
Right.
infant educators with
Right.
Janet Lansbury and Magda
Magda
Gerber,
Gerber.
um, I was 22, had made a crazy move across the country, and started working in a family child care.
Uh-huh.
Um, and to avoid my boss, I would take the diaper changes. And um,
I've definitely done that too, just to get away from the co-teacher.
yeah,
Over here, and I'll do
yeah,
all the diapers this
I know.
afternoon.
So we had 2 houses next door to each other that had family child cares in it. So especially outside, we could have 16 kids between the 2 yards. And I'd say, I'll be at the blanket, and I'll just, call kids over that need diaper changes, or you
Uh-huh.
can send them over to me for the older ones. Um, and I just, oh, I mean, my boss hated it because I took time to
Yeah.
do a diaper change, but I fell in love with it. And I got to know the kids so well. I more than, when we were doing the forced circle time or the crafts
Uh-huh.
or
Uh-huh.
all of those things, you know, because it was just like I got to know them and what they're interested in, because they'd come over and tell me, what they were busy doing, or
Uh-huh.
what they were seeing around us.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting when I started and found Your Self-Confident Baby by Magda Gerber,
Yeah.
and read that. I was like, oh, wow, like, this is a thing. I'm
Uh-huh.
doing the right, like, I thought I was
Exactly.
just
Yes.
like
For me, it
weird,
was
but
Janet Gonzalez Mena. I found one of her books, and that's how I found Magda, which is how I found Janet Lansbury. But yeah,
yeah,
it's like that moment that
yeah. And
changes things.
I feel like it's such a simple thing when you can turn your perspective from teaching to caregiving, um,
Mhm.
because it's so simple. Um, it's something you're doing already. You don't
Mhm.
have to add a new skill or a new part to your day. You can just
Right.
take those small moments um, and tune in.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you really needed to have like a written lesson plan in an infant room, um, you can manipulate those moments into
Oh
something to
yeah,
write on your lesson plan. And you can this is a workable thing. If you just said, yeah, but I have to have a lesson plan every week in your mind as they were listening to us. Um, it's possible to do both.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
Um, so I also, in the same book that we got our starting quote from, the Elevating Childcare book by Janet Lansbury, there is also a section that's like how I learned to love a diaper change.
Mm.
That's also really good. So I'll just throw that in. Um, well, any last Francis stories? There he is. Look at that
He's
baby.
so cute.
He is so cute.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
almost 4 months old. I got to give the stats for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah, yeah.
Francis
Give
is a
us.
fan club, almost 4 months old, and 20 pounds as of this morning when we
Nice.
stepped on the scale. He's a hefty boy,
Yeah.
but so happy.
Yeah, good. Hooray. Well, when he wakes up, thank him for his contribution to this
Oh, I
episode
will.
of the
Absolutely.
podcast. And I guess he can be prepared for the fans he's going to get when this video
So
comes
many
out.
fans.
All right. Thanks, Bethany.
Thank
Um,
you.
and thanks, everybody, for listening. And I hope you'll come back for another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. Bye.
Bye.